Welcome to Table Salt. I'm so glad to be here with you today. We're doing a brand new series today. Actually, it's a one-parter.
1 week.
Talking about missions, and I'm joined with Pastor Randy Wade. Randy, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited.
No.
So it's a great sermon. But because we are talking about missions, I thought it would be wonderful if I could just pick your brain about, as far as missions go, what is Community Life trying to accomplish? What is our vision for missions?
Yeah, so I think you got to go back to our mission statement, which is to connect people to God and one another.
Right.
And we really worked hard to simplify that because we thought if our mission statement is so verbose that no one could even ever remember it, then what good is it?
Yeah.
And we recognize, at least from our vantage point, that really the role of the church is to make God known to the lost.
Yeah.
And then for those who are believers, the redeemed, to find community and fellowship with one another to advance the cause of the gospel.
Yeah.
So that's what really formed our mission statement. And then I think our philosophy has, there's really, from my vantage point, there's two options that most churches go with. One is kind of the shotgun approach, which is let's just send as much out to as many places as we can,
Right.
which oftentimes winds up being very little to a whole bunch of places. When I say send out, I'm talking about people, financial resources, whatever. And so a lot of churches have gotten together, and the Baptist faith in particular does cooperative giving. So they give, and then that goes out. And we think that's a fine model for churches that would benefit, and there maybe a little bit of resource could then be leveraged in bigger ways.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, we wanted to be more involved. I think we wanted to have more hands-on. We wanted, we didn't know what it looked like 16 years ago, but I think we knew what we wanted it to look like, which would be people physically, actively, financially invested, whether it's locally or globally, in the cause of missions. And so we've focused more on strategic partnerships. And once we have an established strategic partnership, then we want to mobilize in whatever would be most effective at planting the gospel in these different areas. And that happens a lot of different ways.
What is an example? When you say the phrase strategic partnership, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so let's take Ghana, for example, or you could use any of them. But Ghana, we met Pastor Stephen Aputara at a conference in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he cast some vision. He's like, there's a need in northern Ghana. And so we went over to visit. We recognized, man, this guy's legitimate. He really does care about the soul of the Ghanaian people. Like, he wants to break through some of these tribal religions. He wants to show them the alternative of true life that can be found in Jesus, as opposed to this other thing that they've been doing for generations. And so with him living there and being on the ground there and knowing the culture, that's a strategic partner. So now we have someone there that we trust, someone that knows what's going on, someone that we can send resources to, someone that when we go over there can tell us with integrity, if you do it that way, it's not, they won't receive it. They're not going to receive it. And so we found that in all of our partnerships. So whether it's Guatemala or Peru or Thailand, Zambia, you name it.
Are the partnerships based with local ministries and local pastors?
Yes, and it depends on if you're combining those two things. So like our partnership in Thailand, they aren't leading a church. They're leading a ministry that's separate from a church. So they attend a church, but their ministry is separate, and we support their ministry. Whereas in Ghana and in Peru, so our missionaries that we support in Peru, they have been there for a number of years, and we've supported them in their ministry, but they have now connected to a local church, and we're developing a partnership with the local church. Yeah. But our strategic partnership is with the missionaries that have been there for a long while.
I see.
And it's beginning to kind of morph into something with a church. Yeah. So yes and no. It would depend on which.
Yeah, I had to say, because I work in the online space, and one of the things that I find myself constantly having to offer an apologetic for is Christian missions, which in a lot of ways you guys have accused us of like being colonialist and like we're going there and we're just spreading American culture and not the gospel. And so what I love about Community Life Church, our church, and the way that we approach it is that we are looking for opportunities in the community, the needs of the community, and they kind of, through a strategic partnership, are setting the agenda, and we're never saying, this is what you need to be doing there. But what I love is that our leadership, you guys, seem to be very cognizant of the fact, like, you want to see where God is moving in a place, and you want to partner with that movement.
Yep.
And I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible way to do
Yeah, we
that.
tell people that go on trips with us, we try to.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, so if you've gone on a trip, and we forgot to say this directly,
Yeah.
our goal isn't to westernize the rest of the world.
Yeah.
If all we do is make a bunch of faux Americans, then we've accomplished literally nothing.
Absolutely.
But if we step into their culture, appreciate their context, and learn from that, there's so many really beautiful things about the different cultures, which is one of the reasons why we want people to go on these trips. Interesting side note, and I love this. So I'm glad that this is actually our topic. We took a trip to Peru. We took a team to Peru. They bonded very effectively. A lot of them went into the trip as strangers. They now have this texting group that they use a lot, which I think is really great. But some of the people have developed such a heart for the ministry that's happening in Peru that they're currently taking Spanish classes.
Oh, wow.
Because they want to go back. And whenever they go back, they want to be able to at least communicate, I'm trying to meet you where you are.
Incredible.
And I thought, man, I just don't know that there's anything really more beautiful than that. That's a testimony to the power of going on these trips. Now, the little flip side of that, I think it's really important we go across the street.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we do, the local missions and ministries that we're a part of as well, because there are lost people everywhere.
I have so much I want to say about that. And I know we have a limited time here, but one of the things that I love that we have done, especially through the pandemic, is this idea of this Change the World campaign that started 4 years ago. I think it's wrapping up now. But through all of this, it feels like God has really blessed us, and you guys have been very good as a leadership of saying, even in our own communities, this is where God is moving. And we want to support that. And you've been very intentional about designating a specific amount of funds. And you're writing fat checks. You're not writing small checks.
Yeah.
You're not like, here's $300. You're like, I think the smallest check I'm aware that you've given is $10,000, maybe. But that's pretty incredible. And I love to see that because it has nothing to do with anything that Sea Life is doing. I love being part of a church where we are just committed to the kingdom of God, and we want to be wherever the kingdom is moving.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be us. How did you guys come to that decision? That feels like a very brave thing to do, to say.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think there were probably a couple of things that led up to that, and I want to make sure Pastor David, even though he wouldn't want credit, I think he's the one that kind of prayed through it to the degree that he got the breakthrough, so to speak. And we teach that we believe God wants us to be generous people.
Yeah.
And so people grow in that, and then they wind up being generous toward the church. And then, it kind of dawned on us, the church should model generosity, not just receive generosity. And so that's whenever things started kind of, moving toward, okay, so what's the best way? And really the best way is the same way we would encourage an individual whenever they're wrestling through the idea of generosity is, okay, so what's my starting point?
Yeah.
I need to pray and be faithful to that. And then I want to grow in the grace of giving. And so we're on track. I don't remember how many years we've been doing it, but, we started, say, year 12, year 13 at saying we're going to give 12%, 13% of the church, what the church receives, back out into missions. And this last year we did 16%, This next year, the plan is to do 17%, 18%.
Incredible.
And the goal is to go up to 25%. Somebody said, what happens after 25%? And we're all like, we'll be old enough. We're probably not going to be part of it.
Yeah.
So that'll be, all the younger guys
yeah.
and gals will have to figure out what to do with that. But
For sure.
yeah,
It's incredible.
just want to model it.
So, and I know that a lot of people are watching this for their CG, and I just want to talk about the sermon for a second, because as we're progressing through the sermon on Sunday, you're talking about how the gospel spread going through the book of Acts and all of those things. And so we talk about corporately as a church, these are the things that we are doing. How do you feel like at Sea Life the individuals are doing spreading the gospel? As our pastor, what encouragement, what would you like for us to know about that? That's a big question.
Well, it's a big question because
I'll make sure you have his email address.
Yeah, because I think that, there are a lot of people. And so for me to just put a blanket statement, here's how I think the church is doing, could pull away some victory that some people are walking in because they're being very faithful to be a gospel witness. And they're being very faithful to tell the world about Jesus and to connect people to God and to one another. So I wouldn't ever want to pull anything away from them. I would say we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better.
For sure.
And so, a lot of the statistics will tell you that 80% of what gets accomplished inside of like a church building or on a church campus, financially and otherwise, typically happens because of 20% of the people.
Right.
Isn't that the way it goes? Or 100% is accomplished by 20% of the people, 80% don't. Yeah. So if that's true with service inside of the church facility and ministry on the church campus, to me, it has to parallel or be replicated pretty closely to what's happening outside
For sure.
the campus and outside the walls of the church. And so let's fudge it a little bit and say 30% of the people are being really faithful to steward their witness and to share the gospel. Well, then 70% aren't.
Yeah.
And so I think there's room to grow and to be encouraged and challenged.
And it's hard because, even for me, I'm a pastor and people kind of expect me to talk about the gospel all the time. And I have to be very intentional about sharing. It's literally a goal that I write down every year just to remind myself, it's outside. When I'm here and I'm Pastor Rocky, people, it's easy to have a conversation about Jesus to someone who's already in the church building. But I have to remember, there's a lost and dying world out there. And I need to go out of my way to have a conversation with them. And it's not always comfortable for me to do that because I feel like they're going to hate me. All of those things that I get, like I said, I get cussed out online all the time because of it. But the Great Commission doesn't apply to me because I'm a pastor. It applies to me because I'm a child of God, right?
Yep.
And it's easy for me to say, well, I don't have the gift of evangelism. But even so, the Great Commission is still part of my life. Are you very good at it?
At evangelism?
At sharing your faith outside the church? Or
so in terms of gifting, no.
Yeah.
There are people that I know that they can turn any conversation into a gospel conversation.
Darla Fraser's one of those.
Yes.
She's always,
And so I do acknowledge that as a gift that some people have.
Yeah.
And yay for them. And I mean that because there are people who have come to faith because of that.
Yeah.
Do I have that gift? No, I don't have the gift. What I will say is I have to remind myself frequently that I know the church expects their pastors to share the gospel,
right?
But maybe more importantly, God would expect his child to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but the question is, are we actually doing it? And the little twist on that I think is really important whenever you ask about in terms of vision and our heart for missions. Somebody could look at Sea Life and go, well, they've got 5 campuses that are physical. They've got a robust online presence and campus there, and people are getting connected. This church is about building this little kingdom on earth that we're trying to build this thing called Sea Life. And I would say that an outsider looking in, and certainly if somebody has a little bit of cynicism or have been hurt by
Right.
another church or whatever, I could see where it would be really easy to think that.
Yeah.
I just want to be really, really clear that that's not our goal.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what we know for sure is all of this goes away. And if somebody, through our ministry efforts, through our obedience, comes to faith in Jesus and goes to a different church, we celebrate that.
For sure.
Because the goal is to get them to Jesus and then let Jesus plant them where he wants them. And so that's locally, that's globally, doesn't matter to us.
For sure.
Do we want people to worship here? Sure, because we love people, and we believe in the power of community. But if God were to lead somebody somewhere else, we bless them and release them. And
Yeah. The
thank
Blessed
God.
Release Program.
Yeah,
That's very
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with
course,
us
yeah.
today. And I don't know where you're watching this. I don't know if you are just, Googling missions online and you found this YouTube video, or if you're doing this in your community groups. Whatever it is, if you have questions or want to know about how we approach missions here at Community Life Church, we would love to have a conversation with you. You can go to clifec.com. You can email us. You can text the phrase Sea Life Connect to 31996. If you are curious about how we handle our finances, all that stuff's available to you. We have no secrets here. We love you guys. We want to partner with you. I hope that you guys have great conversations. What is it like to share your faith? We'll see you next time.